When I was a kid, I was in 8th grade, and Sister Teresa, our teacher, wanted to teach us the difference between boys and girls. She picked 2 people to come up to the front of the class. She goes, Kevin and Donna, come up to the front of the class and bring your books. And so we both went up to the front of the class and stood there with our books. And then Sister Teresa goes, okay, just sit down. And we were all like, what's the matter? And she's like, well, the difference between boys and girls is girls hold their books like this, and boys hold their books like this, but Kevin holds his books like this.
And that was the moment. You're like, oh, I'm not going to volunteer for anything ever in this class again.
That was the moment I was like, I'm going to write dogma. Fuck the church.
I'll remember you.
How dare you, nun?
Buddy Christ is coming at you, woman.
Yeah, I've been steeped in the world of comic books. I don't read anything currently anymore, but this is kind of where I'm most at home, in a comic book store. Whenever I go into one, because we travel a lot, like with Jay and Silent Bob, we'll be traveling across the country with the Reboot Roadshow tour. Every city we go to, we'll go into the comic book store. But I tend to go old stuff. Like when I came in, immediately I looked at the rack and I'm like, oh my God, they're getting $25 for Death in the Family, 45 now? Looking at books that are wall books at this point, classic wall books,
yeah,
but books that I actually bought off the spinner rack back in the day. That's incredible. Like when I look at that and I'm like, oh Lord, I had that. Like the Batman Year 2, that cover, you know, oh, and that's the predecessor to what became Mask of the Phantasm and stuff. I bought that book off the rack. I remember having that Preacher off the rack. Like it's crazy. Of course, The Dark Knight Returns. And now you see them up on the wall as classic books, yeah, and you're like, I'm old, for heaven's sake.
8 U.S. films have ever won a Golden Lion, and now a comic book film.
And one of them is The Joker. I was delighted. Look, any great comic book movie is a win for everybody, right? That's what we want. We love these characters. We just want to see them taken seriously. And I remember when they announced this movie, I was like, yeah, that'll be great. And a bunch of people were like crapping on it. I'm like, no, man. Like, this is DC and Warner Brothers finding their footing after like spending a few years trying to be Marvel. Mm-hmm. Now they're like, you know what? We're a filmmaker-friendly company. We give filmmakers things. They run with them. We're not going to try to interconnect them. We're just going to go back to doing what we do best. Yeah. And because of that, you got like a really wonderful Wonder Woman movie, a really wonderful Aquaman movie, and now it sounds like an amazing Joker movie.
A great Shazam in the middle that I never
great
expected to see.
Shazam movie, I know, and how touching and wonderful was it? So they found their footing,
100%.
And if it means that we don't get them all interconnected, it's fine.
I'll take a Golden Lion over, and we'll get the references elsewhere, but we get a true Joaquin Phoenix Joker.
And think about it, dude, right? I mean, 1920 or 21 when Killing Joke came out. And you know, you read Killing Joke for the first time, and you're like, you know, it's finding your religion, and suddenly you're like, oh my Lord, like this character is like badass.
They can
like,
do this?
Could you imagine if they did this? And you know, in the movies, we've had versions of the Joker, which have been fun. Every incarnation of the Joker, we've appreciated on some level or another, even Jared Leto. But this one just seems like the promise of Killing Joke come to life.
Yeah.
And Todd's not even a comic book guy.
Right.
You know
intentionally
what I'm saying?
separating it, which is what I think an Elseworld should be.
Sometimes you need to put this in the hands of somebody who's just like, I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
I don't go deep in this material. I haven't read all the interconnected, but I think this sounds like a good idea. He's going to win an award. He's going to win an Oscar.
Yeah, it's happening. We're fine. And I love that Heath got it, and now like the Joker is the character
it's
that
the
like
part.
People are like, oh, it's credible, it's here.
Think about it. It's like playing the modern day Lucifer, essentially.
Yeah.
It's evil incarnate with charm and style, panache. It's very Shakespearean. So you could take that character in a number of directions, man.
Now, you talked about not making an MCU film, but I feel like, and I don't know if this is my view askew bias, the shared universe you built is a lot of characters referencing themselves, playing other characters, there's Star Wars references, people lose hands. There's a lot of MCU that you did a little earlier. When you watch those films, is there a bit of you that's like, I built this pop culture canon, and I love that the MCU's made this?
Whenever I watch those movies, like, or usually someone online is like, hey, you had a movie universe first. And I was like, well, technically I stole it from Marvel Comics. Like, they just didn't have movies yet. But like, in the comics, everybody knew each other, and I love that. You know, for me, it was a John Hughes thing. John Hughes like backdoored all of his movies together, where he wasn't really prominent, and he never did big crossover or anything like that. But they were all kind of set in Sherman, Illinois, in this like suburban Chicago area. And as a kid who just liked movies, I liked that. Like he didn't go out of his way. It wasn't like, you know, collect them all. But it was a little bit extra something for you if you went to all those movies. You're like, Sherman, Illinois. They said that. That's where the kids went to detention and Breakfast Club
Yeah.
and stuff like that. They did that in those movies, and I brought it into my movies because of them, also because of comics, because DC and Marvel, also a little bit because of Coming to America. Remember in Coming to America at one point, Eddie Murphy's like walking through the park and he gives money to some bums, and then all of a sudden you find out the bums are Don Amici and Ralph Bellamy from Trading Places. I remember being in the movie theater that night and being like, oh my God! And you felt like the smartest person in the world.
I know.
Does everybody understand what has happened here? You know? And now we live in that culture where movies are based on that, marketed on that and stuff like that. So it's a heady time, but I'm not responsible for it. I was just one guy who was like, let me connect all the movies like John Hughes.